Hello everyone. New video here, Monday, January 13th, 2025. I wanted to talk about the Watchtower and Jehovah's Witnesses who are associated with it. By that I mean those who actively support in one way or the other the ministry and efforts of the Watchtower Society. I say Jehovah's Witnesses associated with it because being a Jehovah's Witness, as I've said many times, is about bearing witness to Jehovah, whom I call Yahweh, Yah. But different groups, different people pronounce the divine name of the God of the Bible differently. Nevertheless, I allow for all pronunciations because I try not to make an issue out of it. And the Bible doesn't say you have to say this specific pronunciation, but we should do it according to the best available reasons. So people differ on that. Nonetheless, a Jehovah's Witness is someone who bears witness to the biblical God. So in the strict sense, I do believe that anybody who actively promotes the God of the Bible by name is a witness to that God. Jehovah's Witnesses associated with the Watchtower, as I've also discussed before, bear witness to the God of the Bible, but only in association with the Watchtower. In other words, while you certainly can, like I did and have, bear witness to the God of the Bible on your own, without the Watchtower telling you what to do or how to do it, be a part of their ministry. It's not something that's common. That's why I'm someone who's probably good to speak on these issues. As many of you know, I've been associated with the Watchtower and Jehovah's Witnesses for over 35 years, of course, my whole life. I was raised a third generation Jehovah's Witness. My grandparents came into the Watchtower, and then my mother became a member of the Watchtower. So I was raised around it. We didn't celebrate holidays, and we weren't always strict adherents to the Watchtower or regularly attended when I was growing up, but that changed as I got into my early teens. And so Bible studies with members of the Watchtower and attendance became more frequent. I eventually reached a point where I got baptized in 1990 after I graduated from high school. But I became very active while I was in high school. I actually made the change and started becoming very devoted to the Bible, Christianity, and the Watchtower's belief structure and system in my junior year, just before my junior year. It was in my sophomore to junior summer transition. I remember it distinctly because events happened that led to it. So my whole junior year, I remember getting into all kinds of conversations in classrooms, at lunch, after school. In the ministry, I was a pioneer, a regular pioneer, when you had to put in 120 hours. And then I also auxiliary pioneered after and before that. I pioneered for over two to 3 years, attended the ministerial servant school. I was a ministerial servant at 19. I gave talks regularly in my hall, and I was one of the few ministerial servants allowed to give talks outside my appointed congregation. So I got married pretty young at 21 in the Watchtower with a Jehovah's Witness. And then 4 years after that, began to have children that I had in about 2-year successions, 2-year period, 2 years between each, I should say. So I did what I could in terms of getting an education. I went to community college when I was still pioneering out of high school from 18, 19 to 20. Then I got married at 21. Took a little bit of a break, but then resumed. I went to several community colleges in the Southern California area before transferring. I got my community college 2-year degree. Then I transferred to State University, where I majored in linguistics, and then I changed to philosophy because of the coursework that I had to complete while I was working near the college at the time, but which involved the commute. I've talked about this before. Nevertheless, I was ultimately able to finish my 4-year degree, in the course of which I also took classes in Biblical Hebrew, Classical Greek, which included lessons in New Testament Greek, phonetics, descriptive linguistics, Greek philosophy, epistemology, and other linguistic and philosophical courses. And so, nevertheless, I mostly gained my education in a lot of these subjects in the deeper sense on my own, because I really took it seriously from early on, as I think many of my opponents on the evangelical Trinitarian side would agree to. I was regularly involved in high-profile discussions in the early 90s with people. As a pioneer, I got involved with a lot of people extendedly, in person, on the radio, and informal debate eventually, as most of you know, with Dr. White and Robert Bowman, and then several years after those debates with Dr. Morey. So that's not something Jehovah's Witnesses or members of the Watchtower Society do, at least not since the days of Rutherford that I can think of. Either way, I decided it was something I had to do. I actually prepared a pre-publication copy of my Jehovah's Witnesses Defended book that was first published in 1998, which I think gives you a good understanding of how much I had advanced in my learning to that point from my baptism in 1990. And the 2 years prior to that, where I really took it seriously in high school and leading up to my baptism. Either way, that continued thereafter. So I published my pre-publication manuscript and circulated in 1995. I had many debates with people, scholars on the Trinitarian side, with many Watchtower people who would take me, spoke to everybody. And so it led to a lot of opportunities and periods of growth for me. But then eventually I entered a period of difficulty when after leaving the Watchtower, of course, you lose all your friends, family. And while that was hard, I was able to at least move forward to a certain point where it became difficult just in my personal life overall because of the relationships I had developed outside of the Watchtower, or since then, because you're dealing with different people. So you make choices and you do the best you can, and that's what I did. But I continued after a few years, at least, since the debates with White and Bowman. Took a while, at least a few years, 2 to 3 years for me to kind of like start to focus again. That's why around 2006, I debated Morey on the radio. And then I started using Christian Witnesses of Jah around that same time. So I started getting back into it after the period between 2003 and 2006. But life was still difficult. Nevertheless, I stayed focused and started to continue to think about these things. I had reassured myself that apart from the Watchtower, I believed in the God of the Bible. I believed in Jesus as the Messiah. And I had convinced myself through reflection on what I had learned to that point over 30 years, and in having been a part of numerous theological discussions and discussions about life and humanity and science, evolution, all these things. Well, you don't know everything, certainly at that age or ever. It allowed me to think about things deeply enough to where after leaving the Watchtower and dealing with a lot of things, I came to a point where I believed again in the God of the Bible. I accepted that life is eternal because it's here now, and life doesn't come from non-life. I believe that eternal life is intelligent because of all the things that we are and that we have around us. That I believe are signs of intelligence. I understand people disagree. I'm telling you about me and what I went through and why I believe what I believe and do what I do today. So I went through this reflection, is what I'm saying, apart from Watchtower. And then I reflected on, well, if there's an eternal intelligent life, okay, that's God. So where's this? Who is this God? Is it the God of the Bible or is it something else? So I, once again, reflected on everything I knew about the Bible, began reading it again, reading other books, listening to everything, reading everything that I hadn't read before. I'm not going to go into everything because it'd be too long of a video. But just suffice to say, I spent a lot of time with everything, both before, during, and after Watchtower, and today. So while I don't claim to know everything or have the most sophisticated, the most degrees or highest level of formal education, I'm proud to say that I'm not retarded. I don't think I'm stupid, but I do have lots I still need to learn, like everybody. So nevertheless, I don't just put forth videos and books and writings or translations because I feel like it, I do it because it's something I've taken seriously over a long period of time, that I've accented with as much formal education as I can to this point. I do plan on doing more. I plan on completing my linguistics degree. With my linguistics training, philosophical training, and other coursework, I was able to complete my 4-year degree in professional studies that really relates to both of those majors and other course material. So it's a specific degree for people who have multiple interests, like I was mentioning. So, and it's also its own field of study where you take from a variety of different aspects of a problem and resolve it by bringing forth something new. Kind of like what I tried to do or did before I even knew about that concept as a concept, but just something I thought of doing where it concerned Christian Witnesses of Jah, right? Bringing together the best pieces or most essential components of something we dispute about or hold as an authority in some way but can't fully resolve. And that's what I call the three things: belief in the God of the Bible, accepting Jesus as the Messiah of the Bible, and following the golden rule, treating each other the way you want to be treated. Jesus said the first and the third are what you would need to get life, and he is the life the Father sent that we're also told to believe. The way, the truth, and the life. John 14:6. So I believe if we follow those three things, regardless of anything else that we are unable to agree on, we'll be able to focus on what's most important, and we will have the most important things that will then lead us to what we want, right? Life. Life that is the result of doing what's good, praising God for what he's given us, that he didn't have to, but that he did. In our view, even after our first parents sinned, he went even further and foretold of a seed that we believe is Jesus, who came forth to live as a man by becoming lower than, not God as a man. That's a false doctrine. We have to deal with Trinitarians all the time and teach this stuff, right? We talk about the Watchtower, the problems it has, and we're going to get into a few in a moment. I'm just kind of giving you a little bit of my background. Most of you know it, but for those of you who don't. So I've also, of course, done other things associated with Watchtower. I helped edit and get Rolf Ferruli's book on the role of theology and bias in Bible translation published. So I've been doing theological translation related studies for well over 30 years on a high level. And I've defended the Watchtower where I believe it was appropriate. And I, in large part, would still defend them on almost everything. I've made adjustments in my view of the blood policy in ways that I felt were necessary because, like I've talked about before, well, we just can't really justify Watchtower's blood doctrine, not with scriptures that expressly teach what they require. And if that's not the case, then what are we doing? We're requiring an interpretation. That's not much different, if any different, from what Trinitarians do. Is it, Watchtower people? It's not something explicitly stated in the Bible, right? God is three persons who share one nature, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, not expressly taught. Yep, but that's an interpretation they require because of a pagan emperor and a bunch of other stuff. We know that. Sorry, Sam. But not. So, you understand there's a difference between an interpretation and an explicitly stated doctrine. That's why our three things are explicitly stated biblical doctrines. Whether you believe in them or not, it's not the issue. But one God the Father is an explicitly stated doctrine that we're to love with our whole heart, soul, and mind. Yeah, those are explicit. I'm not adding anything. What I just said is what the Bible says, basically. I'm not talking about any, sometimes I'll paraphrase essentially. That's not what I'm not saying word for word. If I say mean word for word, that's what I'm going to say, okay? Either way, I guess you can't even believe that today. Nevertheless, right, we don't have this problem. Watchtower and other groups not only have this problem of using interpretations as requirements for acceptance. With Watchtower, right, I did my best to defend things I thought were appropriate to defend where it concerned, what do they mean by prophet? They certainly walk up to, if not cross the line, but they also explicitly deny it. So it's a little different than the biblical prophets. And the way that some people have approached that is, in my view, not correct. The way others have misquoted Watchtower literature to try to make issues out of their date setting is oftentimes also, in my experience, not correct. That does not mean the Watchtower is not making a lot of horrific mistakes. We all know they are, okay? But if you read my stuff, I think you can see I had good reasons for pretty much everything. And if you don't think so, well, you show me. Show me where I misquoted a Watchtower opponent, an enemy of Watchtower, a person of writing against Watchtower, and didn't rightly show, no, they were actually not being fair to Watchtower. So this isn't just because Watchtower's, going down, so to speak, right? Then Watchtower, just hold on to yourselves, okay? We all know there's really no way out of this. Either Armageddon comes and saves you, right? And if you're thinking that way, you're a bad person. If you're thinking you want Armageddon to come so bad so you guys don't look bad, you're a bad person. And I hope it doesn't come so you keep looking bad to match the fact you're a bad person. And you need to accept that. You need to accept that you are not a Christian if you think that. No. No. Nope. So, and if you don't, and you're in Watchtower, if you don't think like that, you're probably still not a Christian. You don't even partake. I wasn't a Christian. Now, I thought I was. And I believed things for the same reasons, good reasons clearly stated in the Bible and the related sources. And I was living a life consistent with Christianity. But I wasn't fully aware of what I am now. So I don't think I could be considered, I guess still a Christian, but not fully awakened, not fully aware of what I was doing. There's a couple of ways we could look at it, or you can look at it. It's about me, so that's what I do, right? I know what I believed and why I believed it and why I did what I did before I left Watchtower. And the reasons I left Watchtower were the same as why I was in it. Having good enough reasons to believe and continue doing what I was doing. Once I reached a point where I couldn't do that on an essential doctrine, that they've made an essential doctrine, Watchtower. Just like we're talking about with Trinity, right? You see, it's not us, non-Trinitarians, one God the Father Christians, who are causing this problem or division. No, where it concerns God the Father, Jesus, Holy Spirit, it's Trinitarians, in large part. They're the ones who said, no, in order to be accepted, you have to accept this later development. We all agree it's a later development. So, you're saying something that the apostles did not teach and Jesus did not teach about the one God of the Bible has to be believed. I feel pretty good about not following you on that because I have an explicit statement in the Bible that tells me something different and nothing that reaches the level of what you guys are talking about. No, it's an interpretation at best, and that is really strained, right? You got to come up with word substitutions, read back later thoughts and metaphysics. No. So, nevertheless, you require that. You require the dual nature, right? Watchtower requires us to not take blood transfusions, use blood as blood. I had someone sympathetic to the Watchtower contact me recently, and it was unfortunate. I hate it when people play these games, right? They try to be like neutral, and then you answer once or twice, and then they tell you who they are. He's like, "What do we do with blood transfusions?" I like, "Oh, well, the Bible says not to. It only explicitly teaches not to eat or drink blood as a food, right? Doesn't tell us we can't use it as blood and keep it as blood in our bodies as medical transfusion. It didn't exist that time the way it does today, so it doesn't say either way. If you don't want to take transfusions because of dietary law, well then okay. But forcing other people to view that as the same thing, when that's not the same thing, eating blood and drinking blood, it becomes consumed. It's no longer blood when you eat it in your mouth. But if you transfuse it into your veins medically, it is still blood. It doesn't become a food, Watchtower people. You are wrong. And you're lying to all these people. And it's really, really bad. And you should feel bad until you stop doing this. You're not supposed to be forcing people to believe an interpretation, or you're going to shun them or kick them out or not think they're a Christian, or that Jah's going to destroy them. All that's doing is proving you're not a Christian. Exactly. You're like the Trinitarians. You're forcing people to believe an interpretation. It's just different. It's a different interpretation. It's the same significance, if not worse, right? People could die based on the blood issue today, but Trinitarians have killed people over the belief about the Trinity in the past. So, you guys are gone, right? You're both doing the same thing. Don't you see that? Well, why do you think that is? Because you've both been misled by the same liar. Don't you realize he's at war? Well, what do you think a war is? Exactly. You're in a fight. Don't you realize that? You're not in he's got you fighting the people you're supposed to be working with. Yes, he does. He's really, really good at that. Unfortunately. Yeah, we can't even get Trinitarians to agree with us on John 1:1. Did you know that? Of course you do. That's like our biggest problem with them. It's so simple, isn't it? We even have a person like Justin Martyr, in their view, and potentially, but whatever, from the very early 2nd century, like 100, into the latter part of the 2nd century, writing about another God, right? In no way consistent with the Trinity and absolutely consistent with more than one God. Whether in a biblical sense or not, it's not the issue. It's the same with Philo. That's why I don't rely on them, but I can cite them and say, hey, you keep saying we're lying about John 1:1, that the Word was a God, and yet we have Philo and Justin Martyr in the 1st century and the 2nd century, both referring to the Logos as another God, a second God. So how in the world are The Watchtower's translation, and in my view, the Agod translation, inappropriate. How is it inappropriate, not only in the context of thought that you Trinitarians allegedly approve, but lie about another and second God because you're stupid, right? Good news, we're not, so we don't care what you think, right? You're the same people with the Greek Orthodox pagans who can't figure out this text, not with the help of Philo or Justin either, and the Greek Orthodox pagans who think they know everything can't figure out 1 John 5:21. That's why they got all these idols and iconography everywhere, and they can't live without it. And they freak out like you're literally disrespecting Jesus' mother and Jesus when they are. And that's what we're pointing out, you pagan perverts. We're pointing out you're stupid for claiming those are actually Jesus and his mother. You're not even supposed to have that stuff up. And that's why I'm mocking you. You're supposed to be ripping those things down and living by faith, not by sight. And you have nothing in the Bible that's on your side. I've already destroyed your little pagan pervert. So they don't know. That doesn't matter how much they know. They don't care, everybody. Don't you understand? John 1:1, 1 John 5:21. Yes, the Watchtower's right. Trinitarians are fully pagan. They admit they're relying on Middle Platonists, and they're not even consistent with them. They're more consistent with us, but it's not Middle Platonism in the Bible, okay? To these pagans, it is. So it's still more consistent with us. And they're absolutely using Greek philosophy, Platonism, and Roman paganism, Neoplatonism, as part of their doctrine. Yes, the Watchtower was correct and is correct. These are pagans. The use of the cross is a pagan symbol. Jesus did not say to conquer in that. He said, it says to conquer in the sign of the blood of the Lamb. It doesn't even say sign. It says conquer in the blood of the Lamb. I mean, you give your life. That's how you conquer. You want to read throughout the Revelation, it says that multiple times. Those who conquer like I did are going to get this. You do this, you're going to get that. You conquer with the blood of the Lamb and the word, the witness of your testimony. Not with the sign of the cross on your shields while you're acting like the beast and killing people. Are you insane? Shake yourselves, Trinitarians. It's the Dragon Emperor. You don't need to follow him anymore. Watchtower people. How long are we going to continue with this? Are you going to wait until it's like, what, another 100 years and so clear? That then what? You're going to believe what? You know, I'm not even sure most people in the Watchtower would do anything related to the Bible if they didn't have the Watchtower. If they didn't have the Watchtower to believe in and hope that if they keep doing what they're doing, they're gonna get through Armageddon and get. There's no question in my mind we would have a large drop off. It's just the way it seems people are. Look at the crowds with Jesus. Look at all of those people who kept following him around. And look at all those who left him. All the way to the end when he didn't have anyone. But even when he did have someone, it was just 12 and one who was going to betray him. And the others who were going to leave him. So, yeah, there'll be a lot of people. You want to make them feel bad. They love to come and fill themselves and get fat. They're thinking about themselves. And the master knew that. And that's why he said, they don't care. That's why we got to get out of here. These people, they're only here for themselves. They're not here for me. They're not here for you. And they're not here for my Father. Now ask yourself, Watchtower people who might actually still want to believe in this God of the Bible, Yahweh, Jehovah. Like me, I still believe. You know that, Watchtower? I'm the one who got up there when no one else would. And I debated scholar after scholar after scholar and defended your beliefs about theology, Christology, God's knowledge, New World Translation, and I still do that today. But I also criticize you where I think it's appropriate. When I started doing that in 2003 with my 3 dissertations, we know what happened. Everyone freaked out. Rolf freaked out. And guess what? Now, Rolf's out. The question is, those of you who are still in the Watchtowers, are you going to get out? Or are you going to be like Rolf and find out when it's too late? Of course, it's not too late, meaning Rolf can't do anything. I hope he's doing well. And I think he did do some things after. But the fact is, 10 years before whatever happened or started to happen, I tried to tell him the same thing, that it was going to happen. Because I could see it. Anyone could see it. If you're really looking clearly in the Watchtower, and you reached the point that I did, that's not something you're going to know not usually right away, depending on what you're exposed to over time and guess what you're engaged in to the extent you come to really get an interest in it. So for me, that was divine name, Trinity, translation issues, New World Translation, some prophecy stuff and related issues, blood. And that ultimately became the biggest issue. But that was because it was unresolvable. The most unresolvable, right? You just that's just no way to really justify their position. And it's a really wild position when you break it all down, but there's power to their citation of these texts and Acts, the apostolic decree where it says abstain from blood. When a person reading the Bible reads that, especially when you're not really aware of the broader context of thought and how these verbs without specific uses can be used, like abstain from doing what with it, right? Even the Watchtower doesn't agree with that because they allow you to have it withdrawn for testing, storage, and fractionating. So that's the whole issue, really, of course, is what kind of abstaining? Well, again, the context of thought is dietary, eating and drinking. That's not using blood as blood. Medical transfusions are. And you could argue that even the withdrawal and fractioning of blood is not. So Watchtower is actually allowing for a use of blood that's not maintaining it as blood, whereas whole blood transfusions are. Again, I'm not trying to say that fractionating is wrong. It's just the inconsistency with Watchtower's policy that ultimately proved irreconcilable with the Bible. And whether or not it was clear enough to use as a lever or a measure of orthodoxy, of correctness, is what I mean by orthodoxy. And I know that can be confused with other types or specific groups, but that's what I mean by it. Unless I'm specific to the Greek Orthodox pagans, right? Either way. So Watchtower people, this whole Christianity thing is going to be really difficult for you. You're dealing with the governing body, right? You guys aren't really Christians in the same way we are right now. I'm not like when I was with you, right? You're kind of like that at most, probably. You're trying to do the best you can and willing to do what you can and willing probably even to die, right? That's Christian. What I mean, though, is you're missing something. You really are, and it's hard to see right now. That's why I'm not going to press you too much. Just kind of wanted to talk, and even though obviously I'm touching on sensitive issues with everybody, right? And I hold myself to a high standard as well, but I have limited, criteria that I use to measure people by 3 things. And I still have my beliefs on other things, but we can get along and still disagree about things and work together without compromising the one God of the Bible, the Messiah of the Bible, or the Golden Rule. So that's, to me, the most important thing. So we don't get into the same trap that a lot of these other groups get into, where we create a lot of these rules and beliefs that become measures that aren't clearly stated in the Bible. And then we're still held accountable, right? It doesn't excuse us from doing things that are wrong and that we'll be judged for. It just means we're going to try not to make it our business beyond those 3 things, unless it's something that's an obvious sin like Matthew 18, in which case that's what we follow. Go to that person. If they don't listen, you take another person. If they don't listen, you take everyone else in your area. You make sure everyone knows what's going on. So there's no mystery, no secrets. Everyone has a fair hearing. And then they can make their decision and move on. To the extent people make divisions within groups like that, well, then they're going to have to be judged, right? Every group is responsible for themselves. It's not that hard. That's why the master said you only need one more, and he'll be there with you. So start someplace. Whether you're Watchtower or not, but you're trying to maintain your faith, you don't have like a church or a Watchtower group to go to, right? That does help them. Whether you're in Watchtower and you think Trinitarians are crazy or wrong, well, their church is still helping them, and a lot of good does come from it. And the same is true with Watchtower. There are a lot of Watchtower people who are positive influences and who promote morals and ethics in ways that are positive and benefit society. But each side also has its negatives, right? So, the point is, you have to live your own life. You have to be yourself. And if you can't be yourself, well, then who are you? And if you're not yourself and people like you, well, who do they really like? If you are yourself, right? I mean, we try to, manage ourselves. It's not like be ourselves, right? We try to be respectful in all conditions. And, while we may have moments where we are more relaxed than others, right? We understand that. I'm not talking we have different moods or periods of reflection or relaxation. I'm saying that overall, if you believe something to be true, you should be able to say, I believe that's true, or I don't. So, for example, in Watchtower, can you say you do or don't believe something that is true against the Watchtower? No, you can't. So you believe it all or you don't. It's an all or nothing thing. It's black or white on everything. Right? Even if it's a gray thing, in Watchtower, it becomes black or white. So people who see gray are forced to pick black or white. And that's dangerous because it makes you into a dishonest person, even if you're benefiting in other ways, right? It's a trade-off. That's up to you to what trade to make. But once you become aware that people they don't really like who you are, what you believe, and if what you believe is actually based on good reasons, and you can see that other people's beliefs aren't, right? We're not just talking about subjective opinions and you put yours above others and you create all this drama. No, we're talking about things that are objectively, verifiably true, more likely than not, right? Like blood transfusions. Is it objectively true and verifiably clear in the Bible that using blood as blood in a medical transfusion is wrong? No, that's not clear. At best, you interpret that from abstain from blood and believe that it includes everything for all time. And then that would include blood transfusions, period. That's an interpretation. It's possible. You're free to do so. The text does not say that. It doesn't say anything. It's only left to be implied based on the immediate context, which is the Mosaic Law, and in the context of the Bible. The only uses of blood that were prohibited from ancient times were eating and drinking it. So it's hard to argue against those being the contextually most likely uses being prohibited. True, that's also an interpretation, but it's an interpretation that fits, right? It actually is something prohibited throughout the Old Testament, whereas blood transfusions are not. So when you try to make a claim on the New Testament in that context of thought, but uses abstain without another use verb, abstain from what use of blood? Well, so at best you have a possible interpretation. Okay. That's not enough to override how people interpret it based on the explicit statements that are prohibited uses of blood in the Bible, eating and drinking, and then condemn them if, they choose those versus what isn't stated in the Bible anywhere, but potentially included in this all-inclusive prohibition that you gather from the use of abstain without a use verb, right? See, so same with Trinity. You see, you can get to these statements or texts in the Bible where Trinitarians try to create this collection of verses that they argue aggregately means Trinity, right? They don't say that. They don't mean that. But even if they did, this is an interpretation, Watchtower. I'm using this for both of you so you can see on each other's side what I'm talking about. What I mean by an interpretation versus something clearly stated. And if you want something clearly stated, you can use our three things. I've given those as well. So to me, it becomes very clear who's trying to work things out and why. Just seems to me that a lot of people on the Watchtower side and in these other groups have more to lose. I don't do this for money. So it doesn't matter to me. I mean, it matters to me overall because I want people to, I want as many people to believe the truth, of course, and be good people. But I think, people can see those things and decide on their own. And I'm not as worried maybe as others. And whether or not that has anything to do with money or resources or I don't know. I know it doesn't with me. I work, I have a full-time job, and I still do everything I can all the time, every day. Not a day goes by or has. I'm not in the Bible or doing some related studying or discussion. So, now maybe I guess that may have been sick one day or something. Things have happened. But it's been a long time. This is my life. So I take it seriously. But I care about people, Watchtower side and elsewhere, Trinitarians. I see the things that keep us apart. And I see, like, for example, with the whole Westhoff thing, it's hard for Protestants to admit they were wrong, right? And yet there's no advantage to not doing so. And when it's obvious, right? It doesn't take long to see you're wrong on the Isaiah scroll. And it's very obvious. It should be done right away and move on. But they just keep it open, right? It's like with Watchtower. They can't admit they were wrong on some of these big dates and things and take the hits. They just can't do it. That's the problem right there, right? That's a problem. It's a problem when you can't admit a mistake, especially when you're telling people they should be listening to you, whether as an academic or as a quote unquote channel of God. Because sometimes those two can be the same, practically, if not in teaching. Either way, the Catholics have their thing, Greek Orthodox pagans, we know. It's time for each person to decide that they really believe. It's time for each person, I think, to do what I did, if you haven't already, and actually convince yourself, if you can, that you really do believe. And why do you believe what you believe, right? Why are you listening to Watchtower tell you, or at least influence you, right, not to partake when you can see very clearly in the Bible that's what Christians do? Why? Well, because the same reason I did for a long time. We believe or believed in this view that there's this other group that could be also related to these Christians in the New Testament. And because of the closeness of the end time, that's an option for many Watchtower people, most, right? That's why. So it's not really a mystery. It's just a question of, is that what's really happening? And what do we make of Jesus saying that the people he approves that go into the other sheep, or the sheep that he approves of because of the way they treat his brothers, they don't know who his brothers are? How could that really be true of the great crowd in Watchtower, all of whom believe they know whom Christ's brothers are, right? So either way, if you want to belong to Watchtower and serve with them and you really do believe that's the way, I'm not here to just constantly resist and condemn you. That's what they do to me, right? Even though I'm one of the few people who have and continue to defend the same God, same Messiah, same golden rule, and a lot of their other doctrines, they still view me as someone God hates and who is their enemy. Isn't that weird? Sounds like what the Bible teaches, that there would come a day when there would be those who would want to kill you and think they're serving God. Either way, I don't think that's correct. And I think if you just had enough courage, this is something that requires courage at some point. It's either going to have to require the courage to do so before it's too late, or the courage to do so when it is too late, which wouldn't be worth much. But at least you'd have courage. And I guess that's something. Like the thief who died with Jesus. So maybe it's never too late, right? Never lose hope, Watchtower people. Even if the governing body fails you, as they have, this is getting, Well, ask yourself, which is better, to get out now or to stay until it's too late? And just hope you still have the courage, like the thief who died with Jesus did. If so, I hope you do. But you could just get out now. And then you could say, I got out. I thought about it, and I said, you know what, I got to get out now, right? This is not working. This doesn't work. There's something wrong. Or if you don't think there's anything wrong, again, I wish you well. But people don't think anything's wrong with what Wes Huff said about Isaiah, or the longer endings in Mark in the earliest Greek text we have. Even though he's been proven wrong, people still don't think he's wrong. What do you think about that? You see what can happen? You see how blind loyalty can be? Either way, remember what I said about being yourself. That's the only way you're going to know if people like you or love you or approve of you. Of course, in Watchtower, as long as you do what they say, you can be yourself. That's the danger. Watchtower people are not stupid. No more than the devil is stupid. And they're stupid in the sense that they do things that are wrong. They're misleading people. And yes, Watchtower, I'm sorry, it's very obvious. Just like it's wrong, Wes Huff is wrong on some things he won't, at least at this point, admit to. Whether he does or not, again, look at the way the people who have supported him have acted. The comments I get, people defending him even where he's clearly wrong. So whether he would admit it or not, they won't, right? Only when Wes says it will they do it. Sound familiar? Yeah. That's why you don't blindly follow anyone. Or if you don't think it's blind, you think you have good reasons and they're just so knowledgeable or they've been appointed by God. Well, guess what? Even those people are wrong. Now what? Now the onus is back on you, like it always should have been and has been. And I'm going to argue that those of you who refuse to put Watchtower to the test, like the Ephesian Christians did, Revelation 2, you're just looking for an excuse not to do what you're supposed to. Or you're afraid. You're afraid because it's hard. It's not easy to accept something is wrong and then not have everybody close to you like you anymore. Believe me when I tell you, that's not easy. You know who had to go through that in addition to me and a bunch of other people? Exactly. Master. So I'm sure you can see where he would be looking at that as a very important criterion of selection. And the best way Watchtower people or Trinitarians who have a hard time doing what you can see is right because of the pressures and difficulties of other people who are going to think you're wrong, it's just fear. It's fear that's misplaced because there is a fear that is in the right place or the right kind of fear. That is the fear of Yahweh, fear of Jah, or the fear of the truth if you don't believe in Jah, which for us would be Jesus, the son of Jah. But try to be inclusive, you know. It's not a good thing to be wrong. No one wants to be wrong. But that's why if you're afraid of being wrong, you fear the truth, right? You want to make sure you're loyal to the truth. That's what you fear. That's what I mean by fear it. When you fear Yahweh, once you begin to fear Yahweh, Jehovah, Jah, that is when you will stop worrying about anybody else Because at that moment, when your fear is only in Ja'ol, nowhere else, except the sun, the same thing. You know what I mean? He knew that. When you have that, that is when, just like Proverbs teaches, you have wisdom. Think about that. The fear of Yahweh will keep you strong. It will allow you to go on. It will allow you to be looked at as wrong. And it will allow you to endure things you don't think you can for very long. How do I know that? In addition to my own experience, every single thing in the New Testament related to the Master shows you that the best way possible. So until we become like him, are we really Christian, Trinitarians, Watchtower people? And that's not for you and me to look at each other and answer. It's really a question that the Master will answer and that we need to reflect on. But you're not to measure yourself by the governing body or by Wes Huff or by me. You're to measure yourself by the truth, by reality, okay? It's easy to get caught up in these fantasies and ideas, right? People give you these pictures. Be careful of these paradise pictures, these songs, this music, these videos, not videos like this that are just instructional, or be careful in whatever, look it up, of course, but whatever I say. I mean, be careful of the emotional influence today. Yeah, that's often why I put certain music up, and even it has a certain effect, but it's non-lyrical for the most part, and I try to be positive, my own taste, but it's not something you have to listen to. Just like you don't have to read my translations, right? And they're not necessary for salvation. You want them, that's my work product. You get 2-in-1, it's online. Otherwise, you can pull out a section of Proverbs from any translation and read on your own. Get another person, study together. You don't need Watchtower. You never did. But they may have helped you. That's okay to believe. I believe Watchtower helped me, was a part of my journey, just like the Pharisees were a part of Paul's journey, even to the point where he killed Christians. No, most of us don't have that kind of background, fortunately. But that didn't matter for him, did it? He still became used more than any of us ever likely will be. So can you see what it is that Yahweh, and the Son are looking at? They're not looking at all these things in the past or things. They're looking at something only they can see. They're looking at how much you believe. And that's shown by what you do. When you look at Watchtower, there's a lot of good things there you can see, just like in many other groups. It's like with many Trinitarians. But there's also things you have to be careful of. And whereas it may not have been easy before for people who don't want to be with Watchtower anymore to do so, there are more opportunities now. And while it won't ever be easy if you're around a lot of people in Watchtower, it'll be easier. And quite frankly, it'd be nice for a lot of us who still believe in the same God and the same Messiah and the same golden rule to have more people who actually believe in those things too. But if that's not you, and you're really someone who believes in Watchtower, and you believe in these end-time prophecies and their interpretations and the great crowd, well, you don't need us, okay? You're where you should be with Watchtower. And we wish you well. It's only if you're not desirous of being with them anymore. You have other options. You don't have to become a Trinitarian. If that's what you want to become, hey, again, that's your choice. Trinitarians are still going through this whole process, right? This same thing is going to happen with this whole popularity with Wes Huff and everything. It's going to bring to light all these differences. The Catholics are going to speak up. The Greek Orthodox are going to speak up. The Protestants are going to defend Wes. And everyone's going to get divided, and everyone's going to get sick and tired of all the divisions again, and we'll be right back where we started with the perverts, pagans, and homos. But for those of us who can see that coming and see that happening, maybe we can do something more. Maybe we can start to just help each other become better people based on 3 very clearly taught things, and try to be encouraging as much as we can. Only defend the faith and argue where we have to, but try to withdraw from that as much as possible. We're told not to do that. You can see what it does to people, right? And we're not here to engage people who just want to argue with us all the time. We do what we have to. I did what I have to. We smashed Sam, right? Exposed him. He's finished. I mean, it's so obvious. I went overkill for sure, but I want to make sure this is over. He can say what he wants. It's over, right? And I'll put up whatever I want to put up whenever I want to put it up. I went on his channel. I smashed him in big fatso. It's over. 10 minutes, game over. Not much more anyone else can say or do. So I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about what we need to do and move beyond all this ridiculousness that's never going to change certain people's minds anyway. And if it does, well, we wish them well too. But for those of us who know what we believe and what to do, we need to come together. We need to do more, talk about these things, right? Watchtower's only going to get more and more problematic. They're still going to have their supporters. They still have a big enough group and people with enough authority. And there are reasons why people are there. It's not easy. Even if you don't believe it's God's channel anymore, God's organization, it's still relationally difficult in many ways. So I think we should be understanding. We shouldn't overly pressure anybody, really. If people only believe us because we pressure them, well, they don't really believe what we want them to believe, do they? So we're just defeating ourselves when we do that. A little bit of pressure, a little bit of guidance where necessary, where appropriate. Yeah, like here, I think. I don't really talk about Watchtower much, but I felt I should. I know a lot of Watchtower people are going through these difficulties or trying to figure out what to do, or they're still putting faith in Watchtower, but that's not going to materialize. So those of us who can see what's coming and they can't see it, well, to the extent we can help them, let's try. If we can't, well, they're not our responsibility. Everyone gets to decide, unfortunately, right? Think of Lot and his wife. Think that was easy? I don't think so. Leaving your wife, knowing what happened, knowing what you were told. What Jesus say? You don't leave, boom, 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 because of me? Not worthy. Think that's easy? So don't overly pressure people. Just try to help them believe. Set an example. Show based on what you teach. Be yourself. You don't have to be perfect. And if they don't like you because you're not perfect, they only like you if you are perfect. And since you can't be perfect, who cares? Neither can they, by the way. They just don't spend enough time looking at themselves. That's why they're always talking about other people, usually. Either way, let's do as much as we can to only bring up issues in other people if they become public, or issues of awareness that are going to be affecting people. Otherwise, let's focus on each other, try to build up our communities. If you're one person and you got nobody, try to get one more. Watch a couple videos in the CW Jaw discussion series, some of the recent ones, Solus Veritas and other ones. We talked about studying together. Pick a book of the Bible, like Proverbs or some other book, and just agree to meet together once or twice a week for an hour or so. Say a prayer. Agree not to be immoral, pagan perverts. And progressively read through a book of the Bible. Share 2 or 3 verses. Don't feel like you have to educate each other on every deep thing. Just a brief reading. Get the idea. Take it with you. Partake if you have it. Say a prayer and build your strength. Then someone else will join you. Then later another. It's not going to happen right away. Just like speaking in tongues doesn't happen right away. Just like healing. No. Yeah, let's demonstrate a little charity here. Let's feed some poor and lowly and actually focus on the most fundamental things first, please. And then when those things show up and the Holy Spirit shows up because we're doing those things regularly, we won't even have to think about it. So I wanted to share those things with you. I hope it was an encouraging message, even if it was somewhat direct on issues related to Watchtower and also Trinitarianism. But I think everyone knows where I stand and what I believe and why. And we're looking out for people. Right? I'm not trying to change people's mind and make them a worse person. As I said, I understand the difficulties. It's not easy. It wasn't for the master either. So I'm not going to give you too much sympathy. If you claim to belong to the master and to be a Christian, you're ready to die. And we shouldn't hear too much complaining. But there are issues that affect us all, and so at times we have to bring them up and talk about them. Do the best we can to try to make sure our faith is put in the right place. Make sure our fear is put in the right person. Remember what Jesus said, I'll tell you who to fear. Don't fear these people. Fear the one I'm fearing. I think he knew what he was talking about. Either way, I want to wish you all well, and may God bless you. In Jesus'